The old observatory floated in the eternal darkness between stars. It was a small place, forgotten by most of the galaxy. Its walls were covered with screens that showed distant worlds, and its halls were empty except for the soft hum of ancient machines. This was Station 12, built 3,000 years ago, for own simple purpose: to watch the young species on the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star, to watch humanity. Observer Thalves had spent 400 years at this post. His species, Thecathrani, lived for many centuries, and they were known throughout the galactic concord for their patience and wisdom. Talc had gray skin that shifted colors with his emotions, 2 hearts that beat slowly in his narrow chest. He had watched humanity since they first split the atom. He had watched them walk on their moon. He had watched them send knee machines into the darkness of space. And he had watched them kill each other in wars that burned their Satisto ash. The Galactic Concord was an alliance of 142 species. They had rules. They had laws. And their oldest law was simple: do not contact primitive sources. Let them grow on their own. Let them prove they deserve to join Thesters. Most species never made it. They destroyed themselves with weapons or pollution or hate in the long history of the galaxy. The Concord had watched 47 species rise from their birth worlds, reach for the stars, and then fall back into darkness forever. The universe was not kind to the young. Thalvik's Hodlways believed humanity would be number 48. They were so violent, so angry, Sadavited. They fought over land, over resources, over ideas, over things that seemed meaningless to an outside observer. They built weapons that could crack their own world in half. They poisoned their own air and water. They seemed determined to end themselves, but decades passed. Then centuries and humanity did not die. Thalvis watched as these stumbled and fell and rose again. He watched them fight terrible wars in Than, build beautiful things from the ashes. He watched them cure diseases and feed their hungry and reach out into their own solar system with shaking hands. They were messy and chaotic and loud, but they refused to give up. Still, the Concord orders were clear: do not make contact. Watch and wait. If humanity survived long enough, if they proved themselves worthy, then perhaps one day they would be welcomed into the galactic community. That day seemed very far away. On this particular morning, if morning meant anything in the endless night of space, Thalves was reviewing his daily reports. The humans had launched another small probe toward one of their outer planets. They had built another space station in orbit around their world. Small steps, baby steps. Nothing that concerned the Concord. Then his console made a sound he had never heard before. It was an alarm, but not one of the standard warnings. This was something deeper, something built into the station's oldest systems. Thal's gray skin flushed blue with confusion as he pulled up the alert. The message was simple: anomaly detected in Sector Sol. He ran the scan again. Then again, his 2 hearts began to beat faster. Something was moving in the outer edges off humanity's solar system. Something massive. The station's sensors, old as they were, could barely comprehend what they were seeing. At first Thulster, then he thought it must be an error. Then the object sent out a signal, and Thalvex realized it was neither. It was his ship. His hands trembled as he enhanced the image. The object emerged from the cloud of ice and rock at the edge of humanity's system like a beast rising from deep water. It was vast beyond reason. Conquered dreadnoughts, the largest warships in the known galaxy, measured perhaps 2 kilometers from bow to stern. They were considered monsters, off engineering. This ship was 19 kilometers long. Thalvex stared at the screen. His skin had gone completely white, the key-throning color of fear. The ship's hull was made of materials his database could not identify. Its engines burned with a light that seemed almost alive. And along its bow, carved in letters so large they could be seen from orbit, was a word in every known galactic language: Atlas. For a long moment, Thalvex could not move, could not think, could not breathe. The humans had built a Titan. His training took over. His fingers moved across the console, sending priority alerts to Concord High Command. Within minutes, Every major governmentee in the galaxy would know what he had just seen. Within hours, the entire galactic community would be asking the same impossible question. How? How had humanity done this? They were supposed to be primitives. They were supposed to be decades or centuries away from true interstellar capability. The Concorde had watched them carefully, monitored their progress, calculated their development with mathematical precision. They should not have been able to build this ship, but they had. Vex thought about all the years he had spent watching humanity, all the times he had dismissed them as violent children playing with dangerous toys, all the times he had assumed they would destroy themselves before they'd ever reached the stars. He had been wrong. They had all been wrong. The alerts began flooding in from across the galaxy. Other stations had detected the ship. Other observers were seeing what was seeing. The Concorde's communication channels exploded with traffic as admirals and diplomats, and scientists, all tried to understand the impossible. On the warrior world of Drexful, General Krathmok studied these sensor readings with his one remaining eye. His species were conquerors, proud and fierce, and they had not lost a war in 1,000 years. Looking at the human ship, he felt something he had not felt since he was a young soldier facing his first battle. He felt small. On Theawater world of Thesan, the Council of Tides gathered in their underwater chambers to discuss the news. Thefasani were peaceful traders who had not built a warship in centuries. They looked at the images of the Atlas and wondered if peace was about to become much more expensive. On 100 other worlds, the reaction was the same: shock, fear, and a growing sense that everything was about to change. High Arbiter Silmar Moran received the news in his private chambers on the Concorde capital world. He was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species. He had served the Concorde for over 2,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had negotiated treaties and ended wars. He had thought he had sent of everything the galaxy had to offer. He had never seen anything like this. Silaron's aide brought him report after report as more information came in. The human ship was not alone. It was escorted by smaller vessels, each one larger than any ship humanity had ever built before. Together, they formed a fleet that was advancing toward Concorde space at a speed that should have been impossible. The humans had hidden this. For how long? They had built in secret, developed technologies that the Concorde had never detected. And now, they were revealing themselves to the galaxy on their own terms. It was, Silmaron realized, a masterful move. If humanity had tried to build their empire slowly, the Concorde would have noticed. They would have intervened. They would have found ways to slow human development, to keep them contained until they could be properly evaluated and controlled. Instead, the humans had waited until they were ready. And then they had announced their presence in a way that could not be ignored or dismissed. "Summon the War Council," Silmaron said quietly, "and prepare the fleet." Across the Concorde, military forces began to mobilize. Ships that had been sleeping in their docks for centuries were brought back to life. Soldiers who had never known real war were called to duty. The galaxy had been at peace for a long time. But peace was a fragile thing. And now, something new was coming. Back on Station 12, Thalvex continued to watch. The Atlas moved with a grace that seemed wrong for something so massive. It did not hurry. It did not try to hide. It simply moved forward, steady and unstoppable, like a force of nature. As he watched, a transmission began to broadcast from the human ship. It was not directed at any specific target. It was an open signal meant to be heard by anyone with the equipment to receive it. A human voice spoke. It was calm and clear, translated into every major galactic language. "We are the crew off Terran Confederation ship, Atlas. We represent the people of Earth and humanity's colonies throughout the solar. For 3 centuries, we've known the truth. Humanity is not alone. We heard the signals. We saw the shadows of ships watching us from the void. Long before most of the galaxy even realized we were listening, we knew about the Galactic Concorde." Across the observation deck, Helvex's skin flashed through a dozen colors. They knew, humans had known all along. The transmission continued. "You chose not to speak to us. You chose to watch, to wait, perhaps hoping we'd destroy ourselves and save you the trouble of deciding what to do with us." Humanity paused. Then, Asterisk, asterisk, we understand. We know our history. We know what we're capable of. But we've learned. We've grown. We've built, and now we're ready to take our place among the stars. We don't ask for permission. We don't beg for acceptance. We simply inform you. We are here, and we are not going away. Asterisk, asterisk, the Atlas will arrive at the border of Concord space in 72 hours. We hope to be met with words, not weapons. But we are prepared for either. The message ended. Thalvex sat in stunned silence. In 400 years of watching humanity, he had never imagined this moment. They weren't asking for help. They weren't seeking mercy. They were stating a fact. Humanity exists and intends to keep existing. Terrifying, arrogant, and somehow magnificent. The Concorde had watched dozens of species rise and fall, civilizations that burned out before reaching the stars, each one undone by its own worst nature. But humans were different. They had seen their worst nature, survived it. Wars, plagues, disasters, each one a catastrophe that should have ended them. Yet every time they clawed their way back, they survived, and now they wanted the galaxy to know it. Against every regulation, every policy he had ever been taught. Thalvex opened a private encrypted channel and sent a single message to the approaching fleet. Welcome. We should have said that a long time ago. Didn't know if anyone would receive it. But after 400 years of silence, someone had to say the words. The screens around him displayed the Atlas, growing larger by the minute. In 72 hours, humanity would reach the edge of Concord space, and the galaxy would have to decide what to do about the species it had dismissed as violent children. Thalvex had a feeling that whatever happened next would change everything. For the first time in centuries, he felt something almost forgotten. Hope aboard the Atlas captain, Yuki Tanaka, stood on the bridge, watching stars drift past the vast observation windows. She was small, unassuming, her uniform worn from years of service, not someone who looked like she commanded the largest warship humanity had ever built, exactly how she preferred it. Around her, over 200 crew members worked non-stop. The Atlas wasn't just a warship, it was a traveling civilization. 3 million people lived aboard it, soldiers, scientists, engineers, artists, families, children. Humanity hadn't sent a weapon to greet the galaxy. They had sent their future. Lieutenant Commander James Chen approached. 70 hours to the border, he reported. Sensors show heavy fleet movement in Concord space. Tanaka expected as much. How many ships? 312. More arriving every hour. 300 warships, crewed by species who had never met a human, who only knew humanity from centuries of distant observation. They would be nervous, suspicious, afraid, she understood. Humans would feel the same. Any communication attempts? She asked. None directed at us. But we're intercepting a lot of chatter there. Arguing about what to do with us. Tanaka smiled slightly. That sounds familiar. Humanity had argued the same way for decades. Strike first. Talk first. Hide and hope for the best. In the end, they chose a middle path. Send one ship, but one too large to ignore. Carry weapons, but never fire first. Extend a hand, but ensure that hand could make a fist. The Atlas represented centuries of work. Generations of engineers who died before its completion, people who believed that when humanity finally spoke to the galaxy, it should speak from strength and wisdom. Then, Captain, an officer called out. We're receiving a transmission. Encrypted, but we cracked it instantly. It's from an observation station on the Concord border. Tanaka raised an eyebrow. What does it say? The officer frowned, surprised. Welcome. We should have said that a long time ago. Silence swept across the bridge. One being out there was glad they had come. Trace it, Tanaka said. Already done. A Cathany monitoring post. It's been watching our system for 3,000 years. 3,000 years. And until now, no one had spoken a word. Log it, Tanaka said quietly. But don't respond. Let them wonder. Chen nodded. Diplomacy was a game of information. After all, meanwhile, across the void, the Concord fleet continued to gather. Ships from 100 worlds, warriors who had trained for wars that never came, and now, for the first time in their long history, they might finally need that training because ready or not humanity had arrived. Long that many of its soldiers had never fired a weapon in anger, that was about to change. Aboard the flagship, a vessel called the Eternal Dawn, High Arbiter Silmorin convened a war council. That chamber was vast and circular, designed to give every species an equal voice. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in tiered seats that rose toward a domed ceiling painted with maps of the galaxy. Silmorin stood at the center, his ancient body supported by a walking frame that hummed with quiet technology. He was one of the oldest beings in the Concord, and he had earned his position through centuries of wisdom and service. When he spoke, others listened. "We haven't infirmed the sensor data," he said, his voice carrying easily to every corner of the chamber. "The human vessel designated Atlas is real. It is approaching our border at a speed we did not believe their technology could achieve, and it is accompanied by an escort fleet of considerable size." General Krathmok, the Oneid warrior from Drexivol, leaned forward in Hisiet. His species were among the most aggressive in the Concord, but they also valued strength in others. How did they build it? How did we miss this? "Those questions will be answered in time," Silmaron replied. "What matters now is what we do when they arrive." "We destroy them," said Admiral Thess, a serpentine creature from the water world of Thessalon. "Before they can build more, before they become a threat we cannot contain." "And if they truly come in peace?" asked another voice. This was Felani, a young Keithrani, who served as a communications specialist. She was for a junior to be speaking at a war council. But something about the human transmission had stirred something in her. Their message said they want to talk. Their message was a warning, the hissed. They told us to meet them with words or weapons. That is not the language of peace. That is the language of conquest. "No," Krathmok said, surprising everyone. "That is the language of survivors." The chamber fell quiet. The old general continued, "I have fought many wars. I have seen many enemies. And I know the difference between a species that wants to conquer and a species that simply refuses to be conquered. The humans did not build that ship to attack us. They built it to make sure we could not attack them." "You cannot know that," argued. "I know warriors," Kamok replied. "And everything about that ship tells me these humans expect to be attacked. Every design choice, every defensive system, every piece of armor. They built a fortress, not a sword. A species planning conquest willed have built something very different." Silmaron raised a hand for silence. General Krathmok makes an important point. "We have watched humanity for many centuries. We know their history. We know their capacity for violence. But we also know something else." He pressed a control and a magus appeared in the air above them. Images of human cities, of human art, of human children playing in parks, images of hospitals and schools and scientific laboratories, images of humans helping each other after disasters, rebuilding what had been destroyed. "They are capable of great destruction," Silmaron said, "but they are also capable of great creation. And in the end, they chose to create." The ship coming toward us carries 3 million people. Families, children, scientists. If humanity wanted war, they would not have sent their best and brightest directly into our weapons range. "Or they air fools," thus muttered. Perhaps Silmaron agreed. "But I do not think so. I think they know exactly what they are doing. They are showing us who they are. All Offwo they are. The warriors and the dreamers. The fighters and the builders. And they are asking us to decide. Will we be enemies, or will we be some thingles?" The council erupted into argument. Dozens of voices spoke at once, each one pushing their own agenda. Some wanted immediate attack. Some wanted to wait and observe. Some wanted to flee. Through it all, Young sat quietly, thinking about the human message she had heard. She thought about the voice of the human captain, calm and clear, speaking to the entire galaxy at once. There had been no fear in that voice, no hatred, just a simple statement of fact. "We are here, and we are not going away." 1. It reminded her of something her grandmother had once told her about the early days of her own species. Before Kithrani joined the Concorde, they had been alone and afraid. Surrounded by vast empires that could have crushed them at any moment, they had survived by being clever and careful, and by never showing weakness. The humans were doing the same thing. They were young and alone, and surrounded by powers beyond their understanding, and they were refusing to show fear. Ani respected that more than she could say. Back on the Atlas, Captain Tanaka had retired to her private quarters. The room was small and simple, decorated with photographs of Earth and a few personal items Shehad carried with her across the stars. She sat at her desk, looking at a picture of her daughter, who was sleeping safely in the family quarters 3 decks below. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders. 3 million lives depended on her decisions. The entire future of humanity might be shaped by what happened in the next 70 hours. Her console chimed. A message from Commander Chen. The Concorde fleet had finished assembling. Over 400 ships now waited at the border. Their wapons armed, their crews ready. They had formed a blockade that stretched across the entire sector. They were nothing their intentions. They wanted humanity to see the wall of steel and fire that waited for them. Tanaka looked at the tactical display for a long moment. 400 ships against the Atlas and her escort fleet of 12. The numbers were not in humanity's favor. But numbers did not tell the whole story. She opened a channel to the ship's chief engineer. Dr. Oconquistadas, report on the main systems. The response came immediately. All systems operating at optimal capacity. Captain, the Atlas is ready for whatever comes. Good. Keep it that way. She closed the channel and turned back to the viewport. The stars looked the same as they had always looked, distant, cold, beautiful. Humans had dreamed of reaching them for thousands of years. They had written stories about them, painted pictures of them, sent prayers to them in the night. Now they were here, and the galaxy was not sure whether to welcome them or destroy them. Tanaka understood. She really did. If an alien ship had appeared over Earth a century ago, humanity would have reacted the same way. Fear was natural, aggression was natural. The desire to destroy what you did not understand was written into the DNA of every species that had ever survived the harsh process of evolution. But so was the desire to reach out, to connect, to find others like yourself in the vast emptiness of existence. Humanity was capable of both. So was the Concorde. Tanaka made her decision. She returned to the bridge and took her position at the command chair. The crew looked up at her, waiting for orders. She could see the tension in their faces. The further were trying to hide. In 68 hours, we will reach the border of Concorde space, she said, her voice carrying Tovary Station on the bridge. We will be met by the largest military force ever assembled in this region of the galaxy. They will point their weapons at us and wait to see what we do. She paused, looking at each face in turn. We will not fire first. We will not show aggression. We will not give them any excuse to attack us. But we will also not turn back. We will not apologize for existing. We will not beg for permission to take our place among the stars. She stood up from her chair and walked toward the main viewport. Our ancestors dreamed of this moment for 10,000 years. They looked up at the night sky and wondered if anyone else was out there. Now we know the answer. There are hundreds of species in this galaxy and they have been watching us for longer than we knew. They have seen our wars and our cruelty and our worst moments. But they have also seen our art, our music, our love for each other. They have seen everything we are. She turned back to face her crew. Now it is time for them to meet us face to face. And when they do, I want them to see humanity at its best. Proud, but not. Arrogant, strong but not aggressive, ready for war. Yet hoping for peace, the bridge was silent. Then one by one, the crew stood. Officers, pilots, engineers, every person on the Atlas rose from their station and silently faced their captain. Tanaka spoke. We are the Atlas. We carry 3 million souls. In 10,000 years of human dreams, let's show the galaxy what that means. The ship pressed forward through the dark, gliding toward the border. Stars drifted. Sensors hummed. And somewhere out there, 400 alien warships waited to see what humanity would do. The Atlas arrives after days of constant travel. The Atlas slowed and stopped, 1 light minute from the edge of Concord space. The ship hung in the void like a steel mountain, its hull gleaming with the cold light of distant suns. Its navigation beacons blinked in patterns unknown to the watching fleets. Captain Tanaka stood at the viewport, hands clasped behind her back. Across the border, 437 Concord ships hovered in perfect battle formation, shields raised. Weapons charged, every cannon pointed directly at her. Behind her, the bridge crew worked in tense silence. Weapons loaded, but unpowered. Pilots strapped into fighters they hoped never to launch. Every system at maximum readiness, the Atlas was prepared. But it was not here to start a war. Status of the escort fleet? Tanaka asked. Defensive formation, Chen replied. Shields at maximum. Weapons armed, but not powered. Good. Armed meant ready. Powered meant threatening. Humanity had come to show strength, not provoke fear. The message opened a channel, Tanaka said. All frequencies. All languages. Everyone in the galaxy should hear this. Lieutenant Park hesitated only for a heartbeat, then activated the transmission matrix. Channel open, Captain. Tanaka breathed in. This was it. The moment that would decide the future of her species. She abandoned the sterile speech written for her by diplomats and spoke instead as what she was. Captain, a human. This is Captain Yuki Tanaka of the Terran Confederation ship Atlas. I speak now to the Galactic Concord, the independent worlds, and anyone else who can hear my voice. On the Concord flagship, High Arbiter Silmarone silenced his advisors. He wanted to listen. We are humanity, Tanaka said. We come from a small blue world orbiting a yellow star in an unfashionable corner of this galaxy. For most of our history, we wondered if we were alone. Asterisk, asterisk, she paused, not for effect, but to choose her words. 30 years ago, we learned we were not. We detected your signals, your probes, your ships watching us from the edge of our system. We realized the galaxy was full of life, and that life had been watching us for a very long time. Her voice hardened. You chose not to speak. You waited, perhaps hoping we'd destroy ourselves. Across 100 worlds, billions listened. Drell warriors froze mid-drill. Thesan merchants stopped mid-sail. Catherine's schoolchildren stared, wide-eyed. As teachers streamed the broadcast, the entire galaxy listened. Tanaka continued. You are not wrong to fear us. We have done terrible things. Wars that scorched continents. Weapons that could crack our planet in half. Hatred that seemed endless. She looked at the wall of alien warships waiting to kill her. But you only saw half of us. You saw our wars, but not the peace that followed. You saw our weapons, but not the hands that healed the wounded. You saw our hatred, but not the love that endured. On the Atlas, Park wiped tears but never faltered at her console. Chen stood rigid, pride burning behind his calm expression. We built this ship not to conquer you, Tanaka said. We built it to prove we could. To show you that the species you dismissed as violent children has grown up. Her voice softened. We do not ask for permission. We do not need your approval. But we do hope for your friendship. We have survived what should have destroyed us. We have found hope in darkness. We have built beauty from ashes. These are gifts we would share. Asterisk, asterisk, in the council chamber of the Eternal Dawn. Alien leaders watched in stunned silence. Admiral Vesk's scales paled with confusion. General Krathmok nodded with unexpected respect. Young Villani's twin hearts pounded with awe. Tanaka raised her chin. Asterisk, asterisk, we will remain here. We will not cross your border unless invited. We will not fire unless fired upon. The question is yours to answer. Will this galaxy be one of fear and isolation, or connection and growth? We have already made our choice. We are here. We are not leaving. And we are ready to begin. Asterisk, asterisk, the transmission ended. Silence fell over the galaxy. The Atlas waited. The Concorde fleet held formation. No one spoke. No one moved. Every species watching held its breath. On the eternal dawn, the council erupted in chaos. Voices clashed, shouting to attack, to wait, to ignore the humans and hope they would disappear. High Arbiter Silmaron listened to it all. He had lived 2,000 years. Seen empires fall, alliances crumble, wars end. But he had never heard anything like this. The human had not pleaded or threatened. She had simply spoken truth with dignity. Silence, he commanded. The chamber froze. The humans have made their position clear, he said. They are waiting for our response. What shall we tell them? Admiral Vesk slithered forward. We tell them. Nothing. We let them wait. Every hour they spend sitting at that border is Anhar. We have to prepare our defenses. To call more ships, to develop countermeasures against their technology. And if they interpret our silence as rejection, Krathmok asked, then they will learn that the Concorde is not intimidated by their giant ship or another voice. Said they will conclude that we are afraid of them. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. It was the young communications officer. Her gray skin had flushed blue with embarrassment at speaking out of turn, but she did not back down. I beg your pardon, young one. Thus hissed. Vela swallowed hard, but continued. The human captain spoke about silence. She said, humanity has listened to our silence for 300 years. Every year we did not speak to them was a year that told them they were not welcome. If we remain silent now, we are sending the same message. On day perhaps, that is the message we wish to send, this said coldly. Is it Veliasked? She turned to face the council. I have studied the human transmissions, all of them going back centuries. I have heard their music and their stories and their cries for help that we never answered. They are not monsters. They are frightened children who have finally grown strong enough to demand our attention. You are young, thus said. You do not understand the Angers. I understand enough, Belly replied. I understand that the Concorde was built on the principle that different species could work together for the common good. I understand that I've spent 3,000 years watching humanity struggle and suffer and die. We never once offered to help. I understand that we are afraid of them because they remind us of ourselves. The chamber went very quiet. Every species in this room was young once, Villainy continued. Every species in this room had to prove that they were worthy of joining the galactic community. We were all given a chance. Why should humanity be different? Silaran watched the young officer with newfound interest. She had courage. This one Anch was saying things that needed to be said. What would you have us do? He asked. Villainy straightened. Respond, Totham, not with weapons or threats, but with words. Simple words. Tell them that heard their message. Tell them that we are willing to talk. And if they interpret that as weakness, these systemided, then we will have learned something about them, Villainy said. Booty do not think they will. The captain who made that transmission was not looking for weakness to exploit. She was looking for common ground to build on. The council dissolved into argument again. But this time, the tone was different. Villani's words had shifted something. The pure fear was fading, replaced by something more complicated. Curiosity perhaps, or the beginning of hope. In the end, it was Silmaran who made the decision. As High Arbiter, he had the authority to act in the Concorde's name during emergencies, and this was certainly an emergency. Young Veli, he said, you will send a response to the human ship. The chamber fell silent again. Veli's skin went pale with shock. Me, High Arbiter. Surely someone more senior. You spoke well. Salon said, Ya understood what the humans were trying to say. I believe you can help them understand us. Send a simple message. Nothing official, nothing formal, just a greeting. One person to another across vast distances that separate us? Vlani nodded slowly. Her hands trembled as she turned to her console. She thought about all the things she could say, all the diplomatic phrases she had been trained to use. But in the end, she decided to speak from the heart. She opened a channel to the Atlas and said 3 words. Hello. On the bridge of the Atlas. The words appeared on Lieutenant Park's screen. She read them twice, not quite believing what she was seeing. Then she turned to Captain Tanaka. "Captain, we're receiving a response. It's from the Concorde flagship. It says, 'Hello.'" We were afraid. Tanaka stared at the screen for a long moment. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face. It was not a treaty. It was not a formal acceptance. It was just 3 words, from a stranger on the other side of an invisible line. But it was a beginning. "Send a reply," Tanaka said. "Tell them thank you for listening." We were afraid, too. The message flew across the darkness from ship to ship, from species to species. On a 100 worlds, beings who had never seen a human watched Thiegs change with wonder. After 300 years of silence, after centuries of watching and waiting and fear, someone had finally said, "Hello." The ice was beginning to crack, and somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, hope was starting to grow. The neutral station was built in 3 days. Both sides had agreed that the first face-to-face meeting should take place on territory that belonged to neither humanity nor the Concorde. Engineers from a dozen species worked alongside human construction teams to create a small structure floating in the empty space between the 2 fleets. It was ugly and functional. A collection of metal boxes connected by tubes and cables, but it served its purpose. Inside, there was a single large room with a table and chairs. The walls were bare metal. The lights hummed with an uneven electrical buzz. It smelled of fresh paint and recycled air. Captain Yuki Tanaka arrived first. She wore her dress uniform, cleaned and pressed for the occasion with her medals arranged neatly on her chest. She had spent 30 years in service, fought in 3 wars, commanded ships ranging from small patrol boats to the largest vessel ever built by human hands. None of that had prepared her for this moment. She brought a small team with her. Commander Chen, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, the ship chief engineer, and Ambassador Michael Reeves. A career diplomat who had spent this entire life preparing for a meeting that everyone assumed would never happen. They also brought gifts. Tanaka had insisted on this. She wanted the aliens to understand that humanity had come to give, not just to take. The Concorde delegation arrived shortly after. High Arbiter Sil Moran led the group, his ancient body supported by his mechanical walking frame. Behind him came General Krathmak, his one eye scanning the room for threats, and Admiral Vesk, whose serpentine body coiled into a sitting position that somehow managed to look disapproving. A dozen other representatives filled the remaining seats, each one the leader or spokesperson for a different species. And at the back of the group, trying to look invisible, was Young. Sil Moran had insisted that she attend. After her unexpected response to the human transmission, he believed she might have insights that more experienced diplomats would miss. For a long moment, the 2 sides simply looked at each other. It was the first time any of them had seen a member of the other group in person. Screens and transmissions were one thing. Physical presence was something else entirely. Tanaka studied the aliens with undisguised curiosity. Salon was tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shift between different shades of silver. Krathmak was built like a tank, covered in scales and scars, with arms that looked strong enough to crush steel. Fisk was almost serpentine, with no visible legs and a face that was difficult to read. They were strange, they were beautiful, they were real. Salon broke the silence. "Captain Tanaka, on behalf of the Galactic Concorde, I welcome you to this meeting. It has been a long time coming." Tanaka nodded. "Hi, Arbiter Silmoran. On behalf of humanity, I thank you for agreeing to speak with us. We have waited even longer." There was a pause. Neither side seemed sure what to say next. Ambassador Reeves stepped forward. He had prepared extensive briefing materials, diplomatic protocols, and carefully worded proposals. But before could speak, Tanaka held up a hand. "Before we begin the formal discussions," she said, "we brought something for you." She gestured to Commander Chen, who placed a small box on the table. Tanaka opened it and began removing items one by one. "These are seeds from our homeworld," she said, placing a small container on the table. wheat, rice, corn, and dozens of other crops that have fed humanity for thousands of years. We do not know if they will grow on your worlds, but we offer them as a symbol of the life we hope to share." The aliens watched in silence as she continued, "This is a collection of our music." She placed a small device on the table. Over 10,000 years of human songs. From the earliest drums our ancestors beat around their fires to the symphonies our greatest composers wrote this year, music is how we express what words cannot capture. "We hope you will listen." General Krathmak leaned forward, his one eye fixed on the device with something that might have been curiosity. Tanaka reached into the box again. This was drawn by a child aboard Atlas. She unfolded a piece of paper and held it up. It showed a crude, enthusiastic drawing of a human and a strange alien creature holding hands under a sky full of stars. Her name is Ima. She is 7 years old. When we asked her to draw what she thought aliens might look like, she drew this. She asked me to tell you that she wants to be friends. Twin hearts squeezed painfully in her chest. She had spent her entire career studying human transmissions, analyzing their behavior from a distance, but nothing had prepared her for this. A child's drawing, a simple hope for friendship. Finally, Tanaka placed a bottle on the table. It was made of dark glass and contained a deep red liquid. This is wine. She said it was made from grapes grown in a vineyard that has survived 3 world wars. Every time our ancestors destroyed each other, the people who tended this vineyard replanted and rebuilt. Every bottle they produce is proof that we can serve our own worst nature. She stepped back from the table. We did not bring weapons. We did not bring demands. We brought seeds and songs and children's drawings and wine. We brought the things that make us who we are. We hope you will accept them in the spirit they offered. For a long moment, no one spoke. The alien representatives looked at the items on the table as if they were not sure whether to be touched or suspicious. It was Admiral Desco broke the silence. His voice was cold and sharp. "This is very moving, Captain. But I notice you did not mention the 19 kilometers warship floating a few light minutes from here. The one with weapons that could destroy entire planets. Is that also a gift you bring in the spirit of friendship?" The tension in the room increased immediately. Ambassador Reeves started to respond, but Tanaka shook her head. "A fair question," she said, "and it deserves an honest answer." She walked to the table and sat down across from the alien delegation. Her posture was relaxed, but her eyes were serious. "We built the Atlas because we were afraid," she said simply. "We knew you were watching us. We knew you had chosen not to make contact, and we could not know why. Perhaps you were waiting to see if we were worthy. Perhaps you were waiting for us to destroy ourselves. Perhaps you were simply not interested in talking to primitives." She shrugged. "Whatever the reason, we understood one thing clearly. When we finally came to meet you, it needed to be strong enough that you would have to take us seriously. If we had arrived in small ships, you could have ignored us. If we had arrived with weak weapons, you could have threatened Adiz into submission. We could not allow that to happen." Kathamak nodded slowly. Tanaka noticed and continued. "The Atlas is not a threat. It is a statement. It says we are here. We're capable, and we will not be dismissed. It says if you want peace, we're ready for peace. If you want war, we are ready for war. It says the choice is ours, but we are no longer helpless." She looked directly at Cilarone. "You have watched us for 3,000 years. You have seen our wars. You know what we can, Dowhan? We are pushed too hard. The Atlas is our way of ensuring that no one pushes us too hard. It is not aggression. It is protection." Silan considered this for a long moment. His face was difficult to read, but there was something in his eyes that might have been understanding. "You are saying that you brought a weapon to a peace meeting because you did not trust us too for peace," he said. "I am saying that we brought a weapon to a peace meeting because we did not trust anyone to offer peace, lest we could defend ourselves," Tanaka corrected. "We have learned Thatlasin the hard way many times over. The meek are not blessed with inheritance. They are blessed with extinction." Thus made a sound that might have been discussed. "And now you lecture us about survival. Your species is barely out of its cradle. What could you possibly know about the challenges of existing in this galaxy? Tanaka smiled, but there was no humor in it. We know that the universe does not care about good intentions. We know that strength without wisdom is brutality, but wisdom without strength is just a longer path too. The same grave we know that every species that has ever survived has done. So by being smart enough to avoid fights and strong enough, win them when they could not be avoided. She gestured at the items on the table. That is why we brought both gifts and guns. That is why we offer friendship while standing on the deck of the most powerful ship ever built. Titus, why we extend our hand while keeping our sword ready? Because we have learned that the best way to ensure peace is to be prepared for war. The room was silent. Tanaka could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone. This was the turning point. Either the aliens would understand what she was trying to say, or they would decide that humanity was too dangerous to tolerate. It was Villani who spoke first. Her voice was quiet, but it carried clearly in the silent room. On my world, she said, we have a saying. The tree that bends in the wind survives, but the tree that cannot stand straight will never grow tall. Everyone turned to look at her, her gray skin flushed blue with embarrassment. But she continued, Captain Tanaka is right. Strength without wisdom is dangerous, but weakness is not virtue. It is simply weakness. Humanity has shown us both their strength and their wisdom. Today they brought a weapon because they were afraid. But they chose not to use it. They offered gifts because they hoped for friendship, even though they know friendship is not guaranteed. She looked at her own leaders. Is that not exactly what the Concord has done for millennia? We built the largest military alliance in the galaxy because we were afraid. We made rules and treaties and laws because we hoped for peace. We are exactly what humans are, survivors who refuse to let fear make us cruel. Silerin looked at the young officer with new respect. She had cut through all the politics and posturing and found the simple truth at the heart of the matter. You speak wisely, Vanny, he said. Then he turned to Tanaka. Captain, I believe we have much to discuss.
But perhaps we should begin with something simpler than treaties and trade agreements.
He reached out and picked up the child's drawing. He studied it for a long moment, his silver skin shifting through colors that Tanaka could not interpret. On my world, he said, children draw similar pictures, stars and aliens and dreams of meeting other minds in the darkness. Perhaps that is where we should start, with the dreams, not the fears. Tanaka felt something loosen in her chest. It was not victory. It was not surrender. It was something much more fragile and much more valuable. It was understanding. I would like that, she said. They talked for hours, not about treaties or territory or theotechnical specifications of their ships. They talked about their worlds and their histories and their hopes for the future. They talked about art and music and the strange ways that different species had found to express the same universal emotions. The formal negotiations would come later. The difficult decisions about border sand trade and military cooperation would take months or years to resolve. But in that small room floating in the darkness between two civilizations, something important had happened. A hand had been extended, and another hand had reached out to take it. When the meeting finally ended, Tanaka walked back to her shuttle with a feeling she had not expected to have. Not triumph, not relief, just acquiescence. Steady hope that perhaps the universe was not as dark and cruel as had sometimes feared. Behind her, the alien delegation watched her go. They had come expecting threats and demands. They had found something else entirely. They had found a species that was exactly like them. Scared and hopeful and determined to survive. Perhaps that was enough to build on. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass on a 100 worlds. Billions of beings watched the recordings of the first meeting between humanity and the Concord. They saw the human captain standing before the alien delegation. They heard her words about strength and wisdom, about fear and hope. They watched as she offered gifts and waited to see if the galaxy would accept them. The reactions were as varied as the species that populated the stars. On Drexville, the warrior culture found new respect for the humans. General Krathmek returned from the meeting and reported to his councils that humanity was not a threat to be destroyed. but a potential ally to be cultivated. They had earned their place at the table through strength and determination. That deserved honor, not hostility. On Thesson, the merchant guilds began calculating the potential profits of trade with human space. The species that had once seemed like dangerous primitives now looked like valuable customers. Their shipbuilding technology alone would be worth billions. On Kithrin, young children asked their parents questions about the humans they had seen on their screens. Why did they look so strange? Why did they only have Aeon heart? Did human children like to play games too? The answers were uncertain, but the questions themselves marked a shift. Humanity was no longer an abstract threat to be feared. They were real beings with children of their own. The Concord High Council debate for 3 weeks. Factions formed and dissolved and reformed around different proposals. Some wanted to maintain the blockade and continue watching from a distance. Some wanted full diplomatic relations and open borders. Some wanted everything in between. In the end, they reached a compromise. Humanity would be recognized as a sovereign interstellar power with right to exist and expand within certain boundaries. Trade relations would be established slowly with careful monitoring on both sides. A permanent diplomatic mission would be created to facilitate communication between human and Concord space. It was not friendship, not yet, but it was a beginning. High Arbiter Silmorin signed the preliminary agreement in a ceremony broadcast across galaxy. Captain Tanaka stood beside him, representing the Terran Confederation. The document was simply unlimited, more a statement of intentions than a formal treaty. But its symbolic importance was immense. For the first time in 3,000 years, Concord had officially acknowledged that humanity had a right to exist among Thesters. After the ceremony, Siloren called young Villani to his private quarters on the Eternal Dawn. She reaved, nervous and uncertain, expecting to be reprimanded for speaking out of turn during the council meetings. Instead, the ancient arbiter gestured for her to sit. "You did well," he said simply. Villani's skin flickered through several colors. "I only said what I believed, High Arbiter." "That is precisely why you did well." Salon lowered himself into his chair, with the slow care of very old age. "Too many of my advisors say what they think I want to hear. Too many of them are afraid to speak uncomfortable truths. You showed courage when courage was needed." "I did not feel courageous," admitted. One felt terrified. I felt terrified. "That is often what courage feels like." Cylon smiled, an expression that looked strange on his alien face, but was somehow recognizable. "I have decided to appoint you as the Concord's first official liaison to humanity. You will travel to their ship, the Atlas, and begin the process of building understanding between our peoples." Vili stared at him in shock. "Me, High Arbiter. Surely someone more experienced." "Experience is not always an advantage." Siloren interrupted. "The humans are young. They are idealistic. They believe that friendship is possible even between species that have never met. They need someone who shares that belief, not some tired old diplomat ho-hoss forgotten how to hope." He leaned forward. "You sent the first response to their transmission. You spoke the words that cracked the ice. It seems fitting that you should continue the work you've started." Ani Felder, twin hearts racing. This was an honor beyond anything she had imagined. It was also a responsibility that terrified her. She would be alone among aliens, representing her entire civilization. "I will do my best, High Arbiter," she said finally. "That is all any of us can do." Meanwhile, aboard the Atlas, Captain Tanaka received news that changed everything. The transmission came from Earth encoded with the highest security protocol savable. Tanaka read it twice before she was certain she understood, then sheckled her senior officers to a private meeting. 2 more Titangent-class vessels have completed construction in the Sol system. She announced the Prometheus and the Gaia are fully operational and ready for deployment. Commander Chen let out a long breath. "That changes the strategic situation considerably." "Yes, it does." Tanaka looked at her officers. "When we left Earth, we were humanity's only Titan. Now we are one of 3. And there are 4 more under construction at various shipyards throughout human space." The room was silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had not put all their eggs in one basket. They had not gambled everything on a single ship. While the Atlas was making first contact, human engineers had been working around that clock to build more vessels just like it. "Should we inform the Concorde?" Dr. Okonkwo asked. Tanaka considered the question carefully. "Not yet. Let them believe the Atlas is unique for now. It will give us time to establish our diplomatic position before they realize how much stronger we actually are." It was not a lie exactly. They had not claimed to be alone, but it was not the whole truth either. Tanaka felt the weight of that decision. Booch also knew it was the right one. Trust had to be built slowly. Revealing too much too soon could destabilize the fragile progress they had made. Days passed. The Concorde fleet began to disperse, returning to their home ports. As the immediate crisis faded, the Atlas remained at the border, a symbol of humanity's presence in galactic affairs. Trade ships began making tentative crossings, carrying goods and ideas in both directions. Veli arrived on the Atlas 3 weeks after the first meeting. She was escorted to guest quarters that had been hastily prepared for non-human visitors. The air was slightly wrong for her lungs, the gravity slightly too strong, the colors slightly too harsh. But she did not complain. This was her new home, at least for now. Captain Tanaka welcomed her personally. "I hope you will be comfortable here," Tanaka said. "We are still learning how to accommodate visitors from other species. Please tell us if anything needs to be adjusted." Veli looked around the room with wide eyes. Everything was so strange. The textures, the smells, the sounds of human voices in the corridors outside. She felt like a child visiting an alien world for the first time, which supposed was exactly what she was. "Thank you, Captain," she said. "I am or I will adapt." Over the following weeks, Valani immersed herself in human culture. She attended ship meetings and community gatherings. She visited the schools where human children learned and the parks where families relaxed. She ate human food, which tasted strange but wasn't unpleasant. She listened to human music, which moved her in ways she had not expected. And she talked. Endless conversations with crew members who were curious about Thelian living among them. They asked about her world, her people, her beliefs. They told her about their own families, their hopes, their fears. They shared stories and jokes and dreams. It was exhausting. It was exhilarating. It was exactly what she had hoped it would be. One evening, she found herself on an observation deck, looking out at Thesters. She was alone. Or so she thought, until she heard footsteps behind her. It was Captain Tanaka. "May I join you?" the human asked. Valani gestured at Thespes beside her. "Of course." They stood in silence for a while, watching stars drift past. Finally, Tanaka spoke. "What do y'all think of us, really?" It was such a simple question, but the answer was complicated. Veli thought carefully before responding. "I think you are remarkable," she said. "You have risen so fast, come so far. Your species did not even exist when my people first reached the stars. Now you stand among us as equals." "It is impressive," Tanaka smiled. But Villian hesitated. "But you are also frightening. Not because of your weapons or your ships, because of your potential. We look at two, and we see what you could become. It is not easy to witness." Tanaka nodded. "Slowly, I understand. We frighten ourselves sometimes too." They watched stars in silence for another long moment. Then Tanaka spoke again, her voice quieter than before. "There is something I should tell you. Something that the High Arbiter mentioned during your private conversations. Something about why the Concorde has spent so much effort watching for new species and controlling their development." Anani turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" Tanaka's face was serious. "He told me about the things in the void, the things the Concorde has been hiding from for millennia. The real reason the Aline Swaz formed in the first place?" A chill ran through Valani. She knew what Tanaka was referring to. Every child on Kithrin learned the stories. Though they were told as myths and legends rather than history, the Great Darkness, the Hungry Ones. The entities that lived in the spaces between stars and consumed everything they touched. "Those are old stories," she said carefully. "No one knows if they are true. Silaran believes they are true, Tanaka replied. He believes the Concord has been preparing for something. Watching. Waiting. Building strength against a threat that might return someday. She turned to face directly. He also believes that is why the Concord was so afraid of us. Not because of what we are, but because of what we represent. A wild factor, an unknown variable. Species that might disrupt all the careful preparations they have been making for thousands of years. Villain's mind raced. If this was true, if there really was something terrible waiting in the darkness beyond the known galaxy, then everything she thought she understood about the Concord was wrong. They were not arrogant overlords who looked down on younger species. They were guardians trying to protect the galaxy from a threat no one else remembered. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Tanaka smiled, and there was something fierce in her expression. Because Cylon also told me something else. He said that in all the Centurias the Concord has existed, they have never found a species willing to stand and fight. Every civilization they have contacted has been happy to hide behind the Concord's walls and pretend the danger does not exist. She stepped closer to Villani. We are not like the others. We have spent our entire history fighting things that were bigger and stronger than us. We have faced extinction more times than we can count, and we have always found a way to survive. If there is something out there in the darkness, something that threatens all life in the galaxy, then we want to help fight it. And he felt something stir in her chest. It was hope. She realized the same hope she had felt when she first heard the human transmission weeks ago. The same hope that had driven her to respond when all her training told her to stay silent. You would do that? She asked. You would fight alongside species you barely know, against enemies you have never seen. Tanaka shrugged. We would fight to protect our home and our people. If protecting the galaxy is part of that, then yes, we would fight. She reached out and put a hand on Vanny's shoulder. The touch was warm and strange and somehow comforting. We are done hiding, Tanaka said. We are done waiting to see if the universe will accept us. We are here now, and we are ready to help. The only question is whether the Concord is ready to let us. Villain looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there beyond the light of the known galaxy, something might be waiting. Something ancient and terrible. Something the Concord had been running from for longer than humanity had existed. But now, there was a new player in the game. A species that refused to ran. A species that built giant ships and named them after gods. A speciest had survived everything the universe had thrown at them and kept reaching for more. Maybe that was what Galaxy had been missing. Maybe that was why Cylon had agreed to speak with the humans when so many others wanted to destroy them. Maybe humanity was the answer to a question the Concord had been asking for millennia. I think said slowly that things are about to change for all of us. Tanaka smiled. I think you are right. They stood together on the observation deck, human and alien, watching the stars. Behind them, the Atlas hummed with the life of 3 million souls. Ahead of them, the galaxy stretched out in all its terrible beauty. The moment of first contact had passed. The silence had been broken. And now, for better or worse, the future was beginning to unfold. Whatever came next, they would face it together. That was the gift humanity had brought to Thesters. Not their weapons, or their technology, or their giant ships. Just a simple belief that had carried them through 10,000 years of struggle and survival. Together is better than alone. The galaxy held its breath. And somewhere in the darkness, something ancient stirred. A new age was beginning, and humanity was